Okay, so to bring us home today, we have Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals, ASX code PAR, and they have a market cap of around 164 million. Paradigm Biopharmaceuticals is a late-stage drug development company focused on developing new therapies to address unmet medical needs. A warm welcome to their founder and managing director, Paul Rennie. Paul, welcome.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I just want to thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you and to your listeners today. I'm just waiting for the presentation to come up on the screen. Paul, can you see the presentation at the moment?
Yeah, the presentation is up on the screen.
Okay. I can't see that, so a little bit of a technical difficulty. So what I might do is maybe I'm assuming we've landed on the introductory page with Paradigm Biopharma. The next slide, please, should be our disclaimer. As an ASX listed company, we are required to advise the listeners that forward-looking statements may be made and to obviously take caution in assessing those. The next slide, please. Again, I'm doing this from memory, Paul, so I might have to just
the team are just working on it. Just give 1 second, Paul. Apologies to viewers here. Just give us 1 second, and we're just going to get the slides so Paul can see them. So, Paul, not sure what the problem is at the moment. The slide up there is about Paradigm. I can't see the slide number, unfortunately.
Okay, it should be in the top right-hand corner, Paul. The first slide was introductory slide. The second slide's the disclaimer. The third slide should be slide 3 should be about Paradigm slide.
That's the slide we have in front of us now.
Okay, brilliant. So we're moving through. So again, just to let the listeners know that we work with a drug called pentazan polysulfate sodium, which is a non-opioid based drug with very extensive safety and performance in terms of efficacy around treating pain and inflammation, and also prevention of blood clots in humans. It has been on the market for over 60 years. We are talking about a 6-week treatment, 2 injections a week for 6 weeks, so a total of 12 injections. Those injections are under the skin, which is a subcutaneous administration of the drug. It's not injected into the joint, it's injected into the skin, generally around the abdomen. We have a lead program, which is for osteoarthritis, which has a very significant unmet medical need, and it does have blockbuster potential. Could I just maybe digress from the slide a little bit in explaining to people about osteoarthritis? It's probably a term a lot of people are familiar with, and as the previous speaker said, particularly baby boomers who are now getting into that age cohort where terms such as osteoarthritis unfortunately become pretty much known. But maybe not all listeners understand that osteoarthritis is obviously a progressive disease that gets worse over time, and it tends to lead to the destruction of the structures within the joint. And so the structures in the joint are obviously bone and cartilage, and there's also a tissue around the joint which holds the fluid for the joint called the synovium. So all of those tissues are changing relatively significantly over the course of the disease. And as those changes become more profound, the symptoms of pain and joint stiffness and lack of range of motion become quite apparent to people who have osteoarthritis. So we are currently in a phase 3, and again, for listeners who may not be familiar with the regulatory process, it's starting with preclinical studies which establish the safety and toxicity of the drug. We then go into the first in humans phase 1, then phase 2, then phase 3. Currently, Paradigm is in phase 3 clinical studies, and we have an IND open with the US FDA, and we are conducting a phase 3 study. The focus of my discussion today is to talk about some recently released data around a phase 2 study that has only reached the endpoint or the end of the study, which is 12 months from when all of the subjects have been treated with the drug. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So phase 3 is in the background running, and we have recruited up to 600 subjects in that study, which is primarily out of the United States, but it is also active in Australia and Europe. But I want to talk about this phase 2 study today. In addition to osteoarthritis, we also have a secondary program, which is in a rare disease called mucopolysaccharidosis. I won't attempt to go into the disease, but essentially it's a genetic disorder, and those affected by it have significant problems breaking down large sugar molecules that are taken up by cells. And when those sugar molecules can't be broken down, it manifests itself in a whole series of health issues for the patient. And one of the associated health issues is destruction of joint tissue. So obviously there's a link between osteoarthritis and mucopolysaccharidosis, or MPS, and we are treating subjects with MPS, and we have 2 phase 2 trials that have run this year. The first one was run in Australia, MPS 1, which is concluded, and the second is MPS 6, which is being run out of Brazil. Treatment phase of that study has finished, and we are looking at reporting those results in December this year. But both of those are focused on the clinical outcomes for patients who have MPS and are treated with other therapies, but those therapies don't seem to be able to address the musculoskeletal or the joint destruction, and that's why PPS has a role in that rare disease. As you mentioned, Paul, our ticker for the ASX is PAR. Our cash position as of 30th June was 56 million. We do have a commercial strategy to partner with pharma companies for the sales, marketing and distribution of these indications, either when they get to phase 3 stage or even into phase 2. We have a 20-year exclusivity on the supply of the drug that I mentioned at the outset, which is PPS. That is coming from a German company. Paradigm takes that and produces a sterile solution for injection, but we have exclusive supply for 25 years post-registration, so no other pharma company can get access to this drug for those indications for which we have patents. And our current market cap, unfortunately, doesn't reflect the stage of development as far as we are concerned. We are a phase 3 company. We have a lot of interest from pharma companies in our data, and we think that obviously the market is, or this really fits very, very well with today's discussion about hidden gems. We think this is an undervalued asset. Next slide, please. Again, going from memory, we have spoken about the phase 2 study. This phase 2 study looked at, sorry, just getting a bit of technical help here, I think. We're looking at this study, which we call PARA-008. It is a phase 2 study, and this is the first time ever that this drug has been evaluated out to 12 months. So in other words, people get 2 injections a week for 6 weeks, and then they have no further therapy, and we assess their pain and function and other measurements out at 12 months. So what we're looking at here is to see if we can bring a product to market that's administered to subjects for 6 weeks, and they then get 12-month relief from their symptoms, and then they get re-administered with the drug in the second year, and so on. So it would be an annual course of the treatment. We were able to show in this phase 2 study, 6 weeks of IPPS demonstrated significant improvements in pain, function, and overall WOMAC measures. Again, for people listening who might not be familiar with WOMAC, it is a FDA-approved scoring system to measure pain and function and overall well-being while on a trial. And that was compared to placebo or a saline solution, so not active. And again, it's injected into the skin around the abdomen. Interesting to highlight that no osteoarthritis drug has ever shown pain reduction and functional improvement at 12 months after a single course of treatment. So we're, of course, talking about relatively groundbreaking results here, so that no other drug administered once has been able to show effect out for 12 months. And I'll be able to share some of that data later. We think that with that proposition, then this drug could actually become used by physicians very early in the treatment of osteoarthritis. If it's able to give that level of sustained effect over that period of time, then I think there would be a lot of physicians and also patients who would appreciate the convenience of being treated and then having a relatively significant reduction in their pain out for 12 months and then being reapplied 12 months later. Interestingly, why I wanted to focus on the phase 2 trial is that there are jurisdictions, and Australia is one of those jurisdictions, that allows companies who are developing drugs for important medical conditions which have a significant unmet medical need to be able to get the product registered and brought to market so it can be used and companies can charge for the product and get reimbursement for the product on the basis of very promising clinical data, including phase 2 data. So the reason I'm mentioning that is that based on these 12-month results of the drug, we are going to be approaching the TGA as well as other jurisdictions that have this scheme in place, which is called a provisional approval. So essentially, you're getting approval of the drug for treating patients within, in the case of the TGA, within Australia, which would then allow a company like Paradigm to then charge and have the product reimbursed or to go onto the pharmaceutical benefits scheme while the company concludes a phase 3 clinical program. And that time frame is within 6 years. So obviously we're already halfway through a phase 3 program. So we meet all of those criteria of osteoarthritis being a serious disease, also osteoarthritis as being a disease that has significant unmet medical needs, and therefore this drug is going to be presented to the TGA in the near term. So we do have, as I mentioned, the phase 3 program still being prosecuted, and we do have quite a number of participants. Says over 500. In fact, the number is over 600 now that have gone through that phase 3 stage. Also coming up for any of your listeners, Paul, that are wanting to follow the Paradigm story, within the next week, we will probably announce also data that we collected at the 6-month time point of this phase 2 study. So I'm talking about clinical outcomes at 12 months, but we also did MRIs on all of these participants in the study at 6 months. So that's both placebo and the treated group. And we looked at the MRIs because we actually want to look inside the joint via MRI and actually see if there's any change to those structures with or without the drug. And hopefully we're going to be able to demonstrate that the positive changes in the joint structures with the PPS group at 6 months, and then be able to demonstrate a clinical program that shows symptomatic relief for 12 months and positive structural changes at 6 months. And that will be announced sometime probably next week. Next slide, please.
Near-term news flows is up on the screen now.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Paul. So news flow will be, we've already ticked off the first 2 items on the news flow. The next one, which is very significant, is going to be the announcement around the MRI data that I just mentioned. Also, we're going to have some news flow around the next stage of our phase 3 clinical trial and so on. Next slide, please. I'm just mindful of the time. Paul, what's the heading of that slide, please?
It's just, that's the end of your slide deck. It's just got the context and your email addresses on that one.
Okay, brilliant. So again, if any of your listeners have any further questions about this, they're more than welcome to email the people on the on the details on the slide there in terms of getting more information. But essentially, in summary, the drug has been used in a phase 2 clinical trial. People were administered the drug or placebo at the start of the trial. They only had the injections twice a week for 6 weeks. Then we monitor their pain, function, and their impression of the impact of the drug on the people for 8 weeks, and then again at 6 months, and then again at 12 months. And what we showed was that at 12 months, we still see a very significant difference between the pain scores of people who were administered the drug versus placebo, indicating that the drug is working all the way up to 12 months. That's trying to put that into a nutshell. And then furthermore, we'll have further data coming out next week around looking inside the joint via MRI and being able to determine the improvement of the various structures in the joint. And that, as I say, will be very significant because we'll be able to show that the drug is improving the structures, should the outcome be positive. It's improving the structures of the joint versus placebo, and that's why we're getting this sustained pain relief out for 12 months. But mindful of the time and very happy to any questions.
That's great, Paul. And apologise for the technical difficulties. You did a great job. Look, I've got plenty of questions. Look, I'm a sufferer, and there's a few people online that also suffer from this condition. How do we get on your trial list?
Yes, well, we actually thanks, Paul, for your question and also the question from the listener. We do have a fantastic website, which is Hope for OA. That's the word hope, HOPE, the number 4, and then OA. So all one word, hopeforaa.com. And people can go on to that site. They can see very significant details around what's involved in a clinical study. They can also put in their details and be informed where the nearest centre is to them. And they can then put their details in and submit it. And then someone from that centre will contact the person back and then talk to them about the trial and assess their eligibility, do some questionnaires. And then if they look like they're going to meet the requirements, they will then come in for a physical assessment. And then if they meet those requirements, then they go on to the trial.
Fantastic. I'll be sure to be doing that. There's a number of questions around any updates on the FDA approval or a timeframe you're looking a timeframe you're looking to go live into the US and Japan.
Yes, look, the FDA approval comes after that. As I mentioned, the sequence of toxicology, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. At the end of phase 3, you then apply to the agency, and we will finish our phase 3 trials around the middle of 2025. And then we submit to the agency. They take some months to review your submission, and then they make a decision. And if it's positive, the product goes onto the market thereafter. So probably late 2025 will be the time that we get through the phase 3 program. That's for the US. The US doesn't have a provisional approval process, but in Australia we have provisional approval. We will make the application to the TGA sometime in early 2024, and we hope to have a decision from the TGA by the middle of 2025, and hopefully on the Australian market by June 2025. Japan, as the previous speaker said, their regulatory pathway is a little bit more extensive and does require a phase 3 program. So it will come after the FDA approval, which is December 2025. So Japan probably looking at 2026.
Gotcha. And the question here, what are some of the side effects of PPS?
Yes, look, the common side effects that we see, and that will be discussed during the consenting of someone into the trial. Common side effects are some bruising around the injection site. So some people actually develop a bruise or a slight skin reaction, which is a bit of redness. All of that is self-limiting and generally goes away within a 2 or 3 day period. There are other side effects that some people report, maybe feeling a little nauseous, or some people in a trial often report a headache. Headache is one of the most common side effects reported in clinical trials. On a more serious note, but a very rare situation, is a drop in the platelet count of somebody, which is known as thrombocytopenia. That can occur, but withdrawal of the drug reverses that situation and the platelets return to normal. So it means the platelets or the blood count, when you look at the different cells inside the blood, red cells, white cells, platelets, the platelet levels can actually drop down by 20%, 30%. If the drug is withdrawn, those numbers return to normal without any adverse clinical symptoms at all. It's very, very quick response. So that would be on a more serious note, but it is a known side effect for drugs that have thrombotic effects. So in other words, affect the clotting system. It's a rare disease, rare side effect, and it's generally like one case in 10,000. So it's not something that people would be experiencing. But during a clinical trial, people's bloods are monitored at regular time points, and if anyone's platelets was getting down, they would be withdrawn from the treatment for a period of time, and those platelets would return to normal.
Yeah. Now, Paul, it was great to have you on today. We have run out of time. I've got so many questions here that haven't been answered. Most of them have given their names. So to all the people who put the questions, I will send them to Paul, and we will respond to every question that we haven't answered today. Apologies, but we have run over time today. Paul, absolute pleasure. Thanks for your time, and we'll be keeping a close eye on Paradigm over the coming months.
Yes, and if I could, Paul, just remind everyone who might be interested in the story, check on the Paradigm website next week, see if there's any announcement around this MRI. It will be very important information to be able to say, not only do you get pain relief, but you might also get some improvement in the joint structures, and that will be announced next week. And I would like to thank you for hosting, and also all of your listeners for attending today. Thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Have a great weekend. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Really appreciate the interaction and the questions. And as I said, I'll make sure all those questions that are unanswered will be on your email early next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Paul.